We continue today with chapter 9 of Devarim. Moshe, of course, is in his lengthy speech about the last 40 years and trying to get Bnei Israel ready to go into Israel. And he begins numerous chapters and with two very famous words that we've had a couple of times already. Shema Yisrael, listen, O Israel. Ata over hayom et ha'yarden lavo lareshet goyim gedolim v'atzumim mimeka. Arim gedolot uvitzurot b'shamayim. Something that he said different times is right. You're about to go into Israel to dispossess other nations that are more populous with you, nations that you will be able to defeat. Am gadol v'ram bnei anakim asher ata yadata v'ata shamata mi yatzei b'nei bnei anak. Nations that are so big that people will say we cannot possibly defeat them. They have huge giants, like of course we'll see with David and Goliath, where all of Bnei Israel, other than David, is terrified of Goliath, is terrified of Goliath. We'll get there. Give me 3 months, 4 months, 3 months. So we'll get there. And so you've yadata yom ki Adonai Elohecha hu over lefanecha eshochla hu yashmideim v'hu yachniim lefanecha. You shall know this day, right? Many times Moshe has repeated today. You need to know this today. I'm going to be gone. You need to know this while I'm alive because I will be gone. And I'm teaching this to you now, that God is with you, that God will cross over the Jordan River with you, that God is an all-consuming fire, that God will wipe everybody out. And you will quickly get rid of these other nations. And don't say when God defeats them, don't say don't say it was because of everything that I did. Right? Coming back, Moshe already said in the last chapter, when you are going to be wealthy and you have everything and you're going to say, it's because of my work. Moshe says, remember, that's the reason you were in the desert for 40 years, to show you that in a place of desert, God can give you everything. So when you're in a place that there's plenty, don't think it was just because of you, but it was God who gave it to you. And so too here, when you defeat these nations, don't think that it was just because you were so great. Verse 5, Pasuk Hey, Lo b'tzidkatcha v'yoshel avavcha taval areshet artzam ki v'rishat hagoyim ha'ela Adonai Elohecha merisham mipanecha u'leman hakim et hadavar asher nishba'u Adonai l'avotecha l'Avraham liYitzchak l'Yaakov. It's not because of your great righteousness. It's because of the evil of these people, and more so because of the oath that was made between God and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says it again. Just once again, no, it's not because of your righteousness. It's not because you're so great. Don't get it in your head that you are something super special. You are nothing special. You are a stiff-necked people, an amkshe oref, a stubborn people, a difficult people. Talked about it in the past what it means, but we have many other things to discuss in this chapter. Pasuk Zayin, verse 7, Zuchor al tishkach et asher hikatzafta et Adonai Elohecha b'midbar. Lemin hayom asher yatzata me'Mitzrayim ad boacham ad hamakom hazeh mamrim heyitem Adonai. Moshe doesn't say, don't think it's not just because of your righteousness, but just remember how you rebelled, how you provoked God. All of these times in the desert, we don't like the man. We need meat. We where's the water? God is, we don't think we can take over the land of Israel. Over and over again, test the lack of faith in Israel, despite all of the miracles that they had seen. And truth be told, right, Moshe is saying this to generation 2. Really, the problems were generation 1 more than generation 2. But as has happened throughout this book, and as Moshe said multiple times, the oath at Sinai was not just something, the covenant Sinai was not just something that happened in the past generation. It's something that is for all of us today. So, right, it might not be, most of the troublemakers might not be around anymore. You guys were young, but this is the history and the legacy of what we've been over the last 40 years. And don't think that God will therefore take B'nai, will deliver this land to you because you've been great, because you've been rebels. Verse 8, and in fact, back at Har Chorev, Har Sinai, you provoked God. You angered God so much that God was ready to destroy you. When I went up to the mountain to receive the tablets, the luchot, the tablets of the covenant that God made with you. I was up on the mountain for 40 days with no bread and no water. And God gave me the two tablets that were written. Who etched the wording? God etched in the wording. And upon them was all of the words that God spoke to you on the mountain. You may not have heard all the words. You might have been scared. But on these tablets, everything was written down. On the day of the great assembly, the day of the great fire with the thunder and the lightning, the day of Matan Torah. 40 days after I went up to get these tablets, God gave me these two tablets, the tablets of the covenant. But then God said to me after giving them to me, Kum raid maher, quickly get down from here. And look at the details of that word. What does God say? Because your nation, Moshe, who you took out of Egypt, they have acted wickedly. Last time I checked, God took us out of Egypt, right? We know in the Pesach Seder, what do we say? Lo yadei malach, lo yadei saraf, lo yadei shaliach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvodo v'atzmo. God himself was the one. God herself was the one who came into Egypt and took the Jewish people out. But in this verse, God's saying, because he's upset at Bnei Israel, you took these people out and they are rebels. They have quickly gone against everything that I taught to them. Saru maher min haderech asher tzivitem, asu lahem masecha. They have made for themselves a molten image. And continuing in verse Yigimel, verse 13, this is a stiff-necked people. They don't know how to transcend their upbringing. They don't know how to become better. Heref mimeni va'ashmidein. Leave me alone, God says to Moshe, and I will destroy them. And I will wipe their name. I will blot their name out from under the heavens. And Moshe, I will make you and your descendants a greater nation than they ever were. And I started to go down the mountain. The mountain was ablaze with fire, almost like, right, God was no longer on that mountain. Har Sinai there was no longer the revelation of Sinai, but Moshe, I think, is sensing the anger of God that's happening and the worry of it. And Moshe has the two tablets, ve'era, and I looked. You built the golden calf. Sartem maher min hader, so quickly. It's one thing, right? Person has a great moment of revelation, a great moment of inspiration, and then, a year later forgets it. This was so fast. God had just revealed himself at Sinai to the Jewish people 40 days earlier. They were so quick to sin. Asher tziva Adonai etchem, that which God commanded to you. Vet post b'shnei haluchot, and I grabbed the two tablets. And I broke them before your eyes. I did something that would shock you, that would scare you, that would worry you. I did it in front of you. And then I threw myself before God, the word nafal there, to go down. And it seems to be also related to the word tefillah. It's like both words, right? Moshe turned himself down, put himself down in prayer. 40 days and 40 nights. And once again, lechem lo achaltu mayim lo shatiti al kol chatatem asher chatatem la'asot hara b'nei Adonai lachiso. Because all of the sins that you committed against God to make God angry. Ki agarti mipnei ha'af, for I was in dread of the fear of the fierce anger of God. V'chema asher katzaf Adonai alechem lashmidechem, because God was really raging to destroy you. Vayishma Adonai elai gam b'pam hahi. In that time, God listened to me as well and didn't destroy you. He's no longer alive, so Moshe can say. And God was really angry at my brother as well with Aaron. Lahashmido, to destroy Bet Palel Gam ba'ad Aaron ba'etai. And I prayed for Aaron also at that time. Bet chatatchem asher asitem et ha'ega lakachti vesrofo to ba'esh. And I took the calf and I burned it in a fire. Ve'kot oto tachon heitev ad asher dak la'afar. And I ground it down until it was a fine dust. And I threw the dust and the dirt into a creek, into a brook that was coming down from the mountain. And that wasn't the only time. Uva tavera, uva masa, uva kivrota tava, maktsifim hayitem et Adonai. Moshe lists 3 other places where you rebelled against God. You didn't trust God. Uvishloach Adonai etchem mikadesh barnei lemor alu rushu et haaretz asher natati lechem v'tamru et pi Adonai lechem v'lo emantem lo v'lo shematem b'kolo. And when God sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, "Go and take the land of Israel," you didn't listen to God's commands. You didn't obey. You weren't faithful. You didn't support God at that time. Mamrim heyitem im Adonai miyom da'ati etchem. You have been rebels. You have been defiant towards God since the day that I first came to know you. And thus I went down and I prayed to God again and begged for 40 days and 40 nights that because God wanted to destroy you. And I prayed to God, I said, don't annihilate your very own people who you redeemed through your wonders, through your greatness from Egypt with your mighty hand, right? Moshe wants to say, it wasn't me, it was you, God. You redeemed them. This is your legacy. Zechor la'avadecha la'Abraham li'Yitzchak u'Yaakov al tefen el kshi ha'am hazeh v'hel rishov el chatato. Remember, God, remember what you promised to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob. Don't pay attention to the stubbornness of this people, to their wickedness, to their sins. Why not? Pen yomru ha'aretz asher hotzatanu misham, lest the people from the country which you freed us from Egypt, well, what were they going to say? Mibli yicholet Adonai la'aviam el aretz asher diber lahem umisinato otam tziam lahamitam bamidbar. Why did God? What happened? God didn't free them because He loved them. God was unable to go and to defeat the gods of the wilderness, the gods of the desert, the sand, the lack of water, the lack of shade. God wasn't able to, so God brought them out there because He hated them and wanted to kill them. And they are your nation, God, who you took out with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm. And Moshe, in this chapter, a couple of things, right? We see, and I tried to emphasize this, God says to Moshe, they're yours. And Moshe says, no, God, they're yours, right? They're yours. And Moshe says that to Bnei Israel. God's not going to take you out because God's not going to give you the land of Israel because you're so righteous. God's going to give you the land of Israel because He has chosen you as His nation from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And there's an idea there, a really important idea about commitment, right? You have a commitment to somebody. Sometimes they wrong you. But you're committed. Your commitment's still there. And Moshe is saying to God, the commitment's still there. Yes, they made a mistake, but it's not enough to sever the relationship. It's not enough to destroy everything. And Moshe here in this chapter as well, and yes, he's emphasizing that's really him in the middle. But what Moshe does here is Moshe demonstrates how he is, I would describe it the way Heschel describes the prophets. He is both a prosecutor and a defendant. He is prosecuting Bnei Israel. He's telling them, you're not righteous, you're wrong, you did bad things, and you sinned, and you should know you have to do better. Over and over again, he said that. But to God, he doesn't say Bnei Israel sinned. To God, he is the defendant. No, and he's using whatever argument. He's not saying in his argument, they're righteous. The argument that he's using to defend them is, use your mercy, God. Remember, what is everybody else going to think? This is an oath that you promised to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that's what I believe the term that Heschel uses is the precarious position of the prophet. The prophet is in a precarious position. He's both defendant and prosecutor at the same time. And that is a hallmark of who Moshe is. We'll see later on if there are going to be prophets who are like that, or we'll see certain instances of prophets who are not like that. But Moshe will prosecute Bnei Israel on behalf of God, but he will defend Bnei Israel in front of God. And that is who Moshe is, and that's what he demonstrates in this chapter, one of the pieces and aspects that makes him so very great.